Welcome, my viewers and subscribers, wherever you are. Good morning, good night, good afternoon, and welcome back to my channel. And if you haven't subscribed as yet, please do so. I have something very interesting here to share with you today. Now, we're going to talk about the so-called SSL repayment. Now, this is kind of crazy. Why do I say that? Now, this is the same company that I heard only had $1 million insurance to pay back people their money. And they were also looking for a bailout to pay the workers that were still at SSL. So it's kind of crazy to believe that all of a sudden, out of thin air, millions of dollars just came in from nowhere so that they can pay back some of these investors. This is kind of crazy if you ask me. Now, one of my biggest question is, who authorized this payment? Is it the courts? Is it SSL? Is it the government? Who authorized this payment? That's a $1 million question. Guys, for those of you who doesn't know, one of the biggest investor in SSL was, or still is, Usain Bolt. And he has lost millions of dollars, right? So I guess if we need to find out if the settlement is really true, then maybe some of us should probably try to reach out to Usain Bolt to find out if he had received all of his money or maybe partial payment of his money. I don't know. But it's kind of ridiculous to think that, you know, all this money was stolen by one person. However, this is something I want to share with you. I do not believe that anybody is going to jail. Not Gene Panton, nor Mr. Ukraski, or even quote-unquote bro God, who I get to understand had vested interest in SSL prior to the big fraud case that came to public knowledge. So that's just a lot to swallow. Now, this Mr. Ukraski, I heard that it was alleged that he tried to bribe or convince Miss Panton to admit to the crime. And I think that's what she did. However, shortly after Dr. Nigel Clark and the Honorable Andrew Holness, they all came out and said that they're going to have thorough investigation. They're going to bring in the FBI to investigate the matter. Until this day, there is no evidence of FBI or, well, there is FIB. It may not be FBI, but there's certainly FIB. But anyway, there is no report as to any finding based on the investigation. So this is kind of a very weird that they would start paying out money without any conclusion of the investigation. But anyway, with the missing laptops and of course the Honorable Andrew Holness has Paula Llewellyn in place, we know that for sure without any evidence, there's nothing to see here. So a lot of people are going to walk. A lot of people are going to walk. And this is very sad because why? those who are responsible for the crime, they're still out there, right? And if all the investors don't get back their money, all their money, then I still believe that the crime, the investigation should continue. And I believe that whatever money was paid out or said to be paid out or to be paid out, our stocks was offered. I believe they're doing that as a hush money so that, you know, Jamaicans will see that the money, some people receive money, some money was returned, so therefore there's no need to continue the investigation. But if this government or whoever is in charge think that this is the 1960s, they're making a sad mistake. Okay? This is the 21st century and people are not that gullible. I believe also that if the FBI was really called in, that Dr. Nigel Clark, he could have been implicated. The honorable Andrew Olness could be implicated. Yes, Miss Panton would be implicated as she is. And Mr. Hugh Croskrey, he would be implicated. So therefore, I figured that the best thing or the best way forward was to make things disappear, in which I think that's exactly what they did. But if you ask me, I believe that the investigation was a fraud, just like what happened to the people's money at SSL. And I believe that the investigation was also flawed. And you'll see where I'm going with this, right? Because from the beginning, things just didn't seem too right. Now, I am a person that like a good detective movie, or I also like to read good detective book. And this is how I realized that the investigation was fraud from the beginning. SSL should have never been in operation after the crime was announced. Everybody who worked at SSL should be a suspect. Okay? And there are, what they say, 7 steps in investigating a crime. Now, I must tell you that I'm not a police officer nor an investigator, but this is just basic knowledge through observation. I'm going to take you through these steps. Now, one of the first steps is to secure the scene. Now, if it was something where someone was killed or whatever, of course, what you would do, you'd make sure that there's no active shooter and this and that and all those things, right? But in this case, it's done in the building. But the same 7 steps applies. And number 1, what you have to do is to secure the scene. Okay? You have to ensure that nobody leaves. Everybody would be detained until after the scene is thoroughly processed. Okay, that's number 1. Now, by this time, I would hope that you have other officers there, and what they would actually do is to start separating the witnesses, right? Or those who could be implicated. You separate them so that they don't collaborate or fabricate any stories. So you're going to separate them. That's what you do. Okay? And let me just say, if that was done, how could Mr. Yukaski contacted Jean Panton in order to try to bribe her or coerce her into taking the fall. The third step would be to scan the scene, to see how far, to see the boundaries, to see the connection, even if it's like a separate location, to see if it's connected to the crime, right? That is something that has to be done. So we move on to seeing the scene, whereas a photography unit would come and take pictures of where everything was, even where who was at that point. Okay, who was at their desk, who was outside, whatever, who was making transfers, who was on the phone. All these things would have to be documented during that time. And then you have sketching the scene, in which, as you know, they could use some chalk or whatever, and they would draw and try to recreate the scene. You see that in movies all the time, if you can recall, right? So that's what you call sketching the scene. Sketch where everything was and where everybody were. And then another step, which would be the number 6 step, whereas a special investigator would comb the scene to make sure that everything was documented, everything was tagged, and everything like that. And also search so that nothing is missed. Okay, so that nothing is missed. And that's very important. Then the final step would be the number 7 step, where all the evidence would be collected. So in this case, all the ledgers, the receipts, the cell phones that's associated with the business, the laptop, and all those would have been seized as exhibits for the courts. Now, let me ask the big question. If all these steps were taken and we know who logged what, we know who secured what, how could the laptop be stolen? From where? That's a $1 million question. But like I said, if you're rich and famous, living in Jamaica, of course, you can make things disappear. And I think that's what happened. Or the next question would be whether or not it is true that the government have such long arms that they can stay from wherever they are and dip their hands into police business and make things disappear. Or just maybe the police themselves are just, bottom line, incompetent and did not do a good job. Because those laptops, nobody should have access. No one person should have access to those laptops. And because of that, there's nothing to see here. I believe that the case is going to be thrown out. Nobody's going to see jail time. And they're going to tell you that many people get back their money, so therefore there's no need to continue the investigation. That's what I believe is going to happen. And everything is in place for that to happen. Anyway, my viewers and subscribers, please tell me your thoughts in the comment section. Like, subscribe, share, and take care of each other. And I'll see you on the other side.